the fragrance of selfless love that has drawn the world into one family. The truth of an eternal message that has been revealed through every act and word. The fulfillment in service that has been taught by relentless sacrifice. The Lord's own life is indeed His message.
Sai Ram, and welcome to the third episode in our serial presentation entitled Message of the Lord. This serial is being specially broadcast to help us all get spiritually tuned in preparation for our beloved Swami's 85th birthday. The first two episodes were mainly curtain raisers, largely meant to set the mood for what we are about to present starting today, which is mainly centered around Bhagwan Baba's teachings.
Let us begin by taking a look at how life treats different people. Some are very wealthy. The majority, of course, are not so wealthy. And some, in fact, are miserably poor. Nevertheless, the fact is that whether a person is rich or poor, hardly anyone is truly happy. Superficially, the wealthy do appear to be having a nice time. And by contrast, misery seems to be a constant companion of the poor. However, if you look closely, almost everyone, without exception, is full of anxiety and insecurity. Only the fears of the rich and of the poor are different. At the same time, there are a few people who seem to be quite happy all the time, without a care in the world. Why is there so much difference and variation? Some say that money is the key to happiness, and yet that does not really seem to be the case. At best, all that money seems to guarantee is temporary pleasure. What then is the secret of real happiness? For decades, Swami has been discussing precisely that, but unfortunately, few have been paying attention. So, let's make up for lost time and try to get a crash course on the essential aspects of Swami's teachings. These days, almost everyone, both the rich and the poor, is cut off from nature. It is all so crowded everywhere. In ancient times, this was not the case. People lived mostly in the open and communed freely with nature. And they often wondered, what are all these different things that I see around me? Where did they come from? Is there a purpose in all that exists, or none at all? If there is indeed a purpose, then what exactly is that purpose? Where did I come from? And how do I fit into all this? Is there any meaning and purpose to my life? And if so, what is it? Who determined that purpose and why? What is called knowledge emerged from the answers to questions like these. It is humans alone that have the special ability to reflect, ponder, inquire, investigate, reason, seek solutions, and to acquire knowledge. In other words, humans are unique because they have this amazing ability to be conscious of many things, including the universe and all that it contains. Since God is the source of the universe, everything that is in it, including our capacity to be aware and conscious, has naturally come from God. So, let us start with God Himself. God, the Creator, is abstract, formless and eternal, and is best described as the ultimate. And most religions emphatically proclaim that fact, no question about it. On the other hand, most devotees of Baba tend to think of God in terms of Swami alone. However, as Swami himself has told us any number of times, avatars are just the embodied form of the Supreme One, special forms though. In other words, an avatar is God with form, a form that He assumes for a specific purpose and for a limited time only. At the abstract level, Almighty God, the Supreme One, call Him what you will, is nothing but pure consciousness. That is why the Vedas declare Prajnanum Brahma, which literally means God is absolute or pure consciousness. Since God is pure consciousness, and since everything, including us, has come from Him, it is natural that some aspects of consciousness are present in creation also. However, consciousness is not visible to the eye, and we therefore cannot see it, nor can we detect it with instruments either. Consciousness is thus beyond the senses. That is the first lesson we must learn. Nevertheless, this consciousness is present everywhere in the universe. Further, its power is immanent in everything in the universe, from the cosmos to volcanoes, cyclones, avalanches, tigers, elephants, and even the tiny ant.
అన్నింటికీ మూల కారణం ఒక్కటే.
For all this, there is only one main cause.
చూడండి, ఇప్పుడే వచ్చినాయి ఎన్ని బల్బులు కనిపిస్తున్నాయి.
You find so many bulbs illumining.
ఇవి ఎంచుకోవడానికి పోతే చాలా ఉన్నాయి.
You can count, there are many.
ఇన్ని నమరసైనటువంటి బల్బులు అన్నిటి ఎందుకు ఒక్కటే ఉన్నది ప్రధానం.
There is only one current that flows in all these bulbs.
ఆ కరెంట్ ఒక్కటే మాత్రమే సత్యమైనటువంటిది.
That current is the principle.
It is to remind us of that omnipresence of God that Swami often says, bulbs are many, but current is one. Jalaluddin Rumi is a famous Sufi poet who lived in the 13th century. In a poem describing how consciousness evolves in creation, Rumi says, I dyed a mineral and became a plant. I dyed a plant and rose an animal. I dyed an animal and I was a man. Why should I fear? When was I less by dying? Yet once more shall I die to soar with blessed angels. But even from angelhood I must pass on. All except God perishes. When I have sacrificed my angel soul, I shall become that which no mind ever conceived. Oh, let me not exist, for non-existence proclaims, to Him we shall return. The question now becomes, are we aware that we have come from God and that life in the human form has been given to us so that we may go back to God? I am afraid that most of us do not know that. Baba adds that on the contrary, we waste our lives without even bothering to inquire about such matters. Which is why he often asks us various questions related to our true nature and also supplies the answers. Here is a sample. He asks, who are you? And he gives the answer, you are the Atma. He asks, where did you come from? And he gives the answer, from the Supreme Self. He asks, where are you supposed to go? And he gives the answer, back to the Supreme Self. Baba then adds, knowing this truth, engage yourself in acts that would help you to enjoy the bliss of the Supreme, also known as the Supreme Self and as Atma. We start with the fact that God, as Swami tells us again and again, is omnipresent. That means consciousness is present everywhere in the universe, from the galaxies to the ant. As scholars declare, consciousness sleeps in a stone, stirs in a plant, awakens in an animal, and flowers in a human. What this means is that consciousness is passive in inanimate beings, but becomes active in living beings, though to different degrees. What is particularly important is that amongst all living beings, consciousness expresses itself best in humans. How it does so we shall see shortly. But for the moment, let us remember that human birth is really special because it is humans alone who can give the highest expression to the divinity latent within. By the way, that also is the reason why Swami often tells us that of all births, the human form is a rare privilege and special blessing.
The human being is really very lucky. Human life is so sacred. Of all the living creatures, human life is amazing. This sacred human life is made unsacred.
The question now becomes, how and to what extent does consciousness flower in a human? Before we can consider the answer to this question, we need some background. Swami says that every human being is made up of three distinct entities, namely the gross body, the subtle mind, and the Atma, which is the cause for all. Where do all these come from? Let us start with the body. You and I would say that the body is made up of flesh, bones, blood, etc. Very true. But then flesh, blood, bones, etc. are made up of molecules of various kinds. And molecules in turn are made up of atoms. Okay, but where do these atoms come from? You know something? Every single atom in every human body can, in principle, be traced all the way back to the beginning of the universe, to the so-called Big Bang, with which the universe is supposed to have been born. By the way, this is not something I am making up. This is what modern science says. Thus, our body is verily connected to the beginning of creation. Since creation itself came from the Creator, we can say that our body really came from God. And you know what? Just to constantly remind us that we all came from Him, God has decided to make our heart His permanent residence. That is what Swami himself often tells us. Since Atma is just another name for God, and since God dwells within us, it means that Atma also is a part of us. From all this we learn that we not only have a body complete with senses and the brain, but also the Atma within us, of course. As a result, we can speak of not only bodily genes, but also of spiritual or divine genes. The difference is that while the physical or bodily genes come from the parents and through them from the ancestors, the divine genes come directly from God or Atma. It is by way of stressing this important fact that Swami sometimes addresses his devotees as Divyatma Swarupalara, meaning embodiments of the divine Atma. We are now left with the question, we also have a mind, don't we? Where does that come from? You are all aware that even animals have brains, which is a part of the gross body of the animal concerned. Thus, the rat has a brain, the monkey has a brain, elephant has a brain, and so on. The brain is very much like the CPU of a computer. humans, who are the end product of biological evolution, have also a brain, a very powerful brain, in fact. But they also have something much more than a mere brain, and that something is the mind. It is difficult to describe the mind, but we all know that we have it. The mind is not merely the brain, as many think it to be. Rather, it is something extra that is subtle, and between the gross body and the causal Atma. One may thus think of it as interface between the body and the Atma, an interface that has evolved by the brain of the body and the Atma growing towards each other, shall I say? The mind is extremely powerful, especially since part of it has grown out of the Atma, so to speak. So powerful is the mind that in Gita, Krishna tells Arjuna, "Among the senses, I am the mind, and in living beings, I am consciousness." It is this power of the mind, directly derived from the Atma, that helped humans to quickly rise above primitive existence and within a few thousand years to reach amazing heights. In fact, so high have humans soared that they have now begun to totally dominate the planet. Remember, all this happened because of the power endowed to the mind by God. Now, the mind is remarkable in that it can focus attention not only on the world outside, but also look within. Thus it is that the mind can ask, "Who am I?" A question that Bhagavan Baba often raises and discusses in his discourses. To you and me, this question may sound strange. But when Swami is raising this question, what he is asking is the following. Of the three elements that make up your personality, namely the body, the mind, and the Atma, which of these do you identify yourself with?
You are not one person, but three. You are three. The one you think you are physical body. The one you think you are is a physical body. The one others think you are mental body. The one others think you are is mental. The one you really are. The one you really are is Atma, the spirit. You are the embodiment, personification of the spirit. You are not playing with the body. Body is like a water bubble. Body is like a water bubble. Mind is like a bad monkey. Mind is like a bad monkey. Don't follow the body. Don't follow the mind. Follow the conscience. Don't follow the body, don't follow the mind, follow the conscience. That is your true form. That is true. That is principle of God. Having been this truthful form in you, the form of the beast, you are in search of something elsewhere.
What does that mean? What does it mean to say that I am the Atma? What Swami means is that our feelings, thoughts, words and deeds must reflect the fact that the core of our personality is the Atma. To make us understand what exactly this means, Swami points out that a person who is dominated by his body and senses would be rather like an animal with a tendency to be angry, be cruel and so on. A person dominated by the mind, on the other hand, is likely to be clever, intelligent, creative, etc. But the mind-dominated person could also be aggressive, ambitious, cunning, unscrupulous, ruthless, and so on. In the worst case, the person could even be truly demonic. What about a person who is tuned to the Atma? How would that kind of person be? Swami has described that person also. Such a person would be kind, very loving, always compassionate, ever ready to help, always smiling, and so on. He would be the very embodiment of virtue and purity. Does that ring a bell? I'm sure it does. Yes, that description reminds us of Swami himself, does it not? Of course it does, and that precisely is why Swami often tells us, "Your life should be my message." That is the simplest way of saying, love all, serve all. Do not even think of hurting a person. Always try to help and never be selfish, etc. We have heard all that so many times. And yet, how many people do we find who conform to these principles? Sadly, very few. And why is that? That's because the mind comes in the way and distracts our attention completely from Swami's teachings. As Swami often tells us, our mind can be a good friend and show us the way to God. On the other hand, that same mind can mislead us and hand us over to the devil. Thus, the mind can be a friend or a foe. If we are not careful, enemy is what the mind would become.
So, it all comes down to this. What exactly should we do in order to prevent the mind from turning against us and instead steer us towards God? Well, the answer is simple. Follow Swami's teachings. So now you know why we are presenting this special teleserial wherein we recall many things that Swami has been telling us all these years. And to proceed further, we must have some idea of how, if we are not careful, the mind can trick and mislead.
Let us say there is a tourist walking around in that part of a big city where there are many casinos, nightclubs, and the like. The man sees a gambling den and feels the urge to go in and gamble, even though he does not have much money with him. This is what temptation is all about. Where exactly does this temptation come from? Baba says, temptation is a manifestation of a latent evil tendency lurking in the dark corners of the mind. That is where temptation hides like cockroaches do. Now, when do cockroaches come out of hiding? When it is dark and when there is no one around. In the same way, temptation shows its ugly face when there is the darkness of spiritual ignorance. So, our friend the tourist is pulled strongly by the temptation to gamble and perhaps even make some money. At the same time, something in him is sending strong warning signals not to fall for the temptation. There is thus a strong pull from two sides. What is the poor fellow to do? Swami says, what the man should do is simple. He must get in touch with his Atma within, and this connection he makes via the pipeline called Buddhi. He should ask the Atma, my mind is telling me to gamble, should I or should I not? And whatever is the advice that the Atma gives, he should faithfully follow. Atma would of course say, you fool, you have come to this city for a certain purpose. Do that job and do not get distracted by all these false attractions. They would only drag you to ruin. Incidentally, that is the reason why Swami says, always follow the master. Your conscience is your real master. Just to remind you, conscience, Atma, indweller. All these are just different ways of referring to Baba, who resides in our hearts. Let us go back for a moment to Buddhi, to which we made a reference. The simplest way of thinking of Buddhi is as a hotline to God within. Now, of course, you know that if the hotline is not kept in working condition, we cannot reach God when there is an emergency. That is pretty obvious. So, how does one keep this hotline in good working condition? Swami has the answer as always. He says, always avoid bad company. Avoid seeing what is bad. Avoid hearing what is bad. Avoid speaking what is bad. Avoid hurting others, no matter what the circumstance. Make sure you always feel good and think good. Make sure you always speak good and do good. Not very complicated rules, are they? But they must be followed strictly and regularly, remembering Swami would always be watching. Okay, one does all that. How does it help? In the following way. If you feel that mind might be misleading and tricking you, you can straight away dial the hotline and ask your conscience the following questions describing what the mind is asking you to do. You then ask, is it right or is it wrong? Is it selfish or is it selfless? Is there any anger or jealousy involved? Is there any cheating or dishonesty involved? Will it harm anyone? Will it do good to others and make them happy? Finally, will God approve of what I am thinking of doing? If all these questions are asked in full sincerity and with the intention of staying true to Baba's teachings, you can bet that your conscience, which is nothing else but Swami himself seated in your heart, would guide you properly. So there it is. And now we come to the take-home lesson of the episode, which is, although we are made up of a body, the mind and the Atma, our true nature is divine. Therefore, all our feelings, thoughts, words and deeds must reflect the nature of the Atma in every possible way. In turn, this implies that all our actions must be in full conformity with Sathya and Dharma in all their aspects. As Swami would put it, your thought, word and deed must be totally pure and have the full fragrance of my love.
And now that is possible only when Swami becomes the constant focus of our lives. And why should he not be, considering that he has showered so much love on us all the time? Think about it. Thank you for being with us in this episode, and we hope that you will certainly join us again for the next episode. Jai Sai Ram.